Well, hello there, everyone. Here, show you right here, talking about having a desire to make a lot of money, and what does that usually mean? Whenever yeah, if it's going to be any source of a conversation, maybe talking about for best marketing tips or something like that, or it could also maybe be something that you would, you'll see and read on a doctor's note, right? And a lot of times it sure seems that way. That what does that usually mean? Whenever somebody gives that sort of statement, and half the time you want to know too if that's really supposed to be a question or if that's really supposed to be kind of like a quote, where to just kind of get some ideas about, okay, what exactly that you're looking for and what is your intents toward the why. That you're applying for this position today or something like that. So it could be worded in a number of different ways, right? But still, but it sure seems that way. That when we talk about having a desire to make a lot of money, and you want to know too that what exactly does that mean necessarily? Could it possibly mean toward that are you pretty confident in learning new things? And so I'll just go ahead and put on here on this next line right here is to where that the question seems to go by that but put right here that like just quotes. It's like, do you have that ability to learn new things? So it sure seems that way that if you're going to be going to a job interview or something like that, or like completing any sorts of task or anything like that, and at the time it seems like that there's going to be these surveys and maybe these assessments, right? And it seems like that's all about asking the questions and you go ahead and give reasonable answers and all. But a lot of times it sure seems that way. That whenever you're going to be filling out an application, though, what you are really are doing is like you're building on interest toward if you're going to be returning to school or to work or anything else that you're going to be working on, right? And let's just say that if you're trying to maybe open up your own business or something, something like that, but you're still at that in order to be able to have a desire to make a lot of money, though, what source of confidence do you think that you would need to have whenever it comes to some situation like that, right? And so it sure seems that way that when we talk about a lot of money, are we necessarily thinking about is toward, okay, yeah, up to $22, or $15 an hour or something like that, or we may be talking about is to where that you go ahead. I'm like, yeah. Do you have a desire to make a lot of money? And even if you do, that do you have a desire to learn new things? And maybe do you have a desire to go through the required training? Just to be able to proceed with for the next steps. So it sure seems that way that each time that I really think about that, though, and at the time it seems like that whenever you do have a desire to make a lot of money, it seems like that they're asking you is toward are you willing to accept those responsibilities, and also or do you agree with the description so far as if there's anything explained, like if you're going to be filling out any sort of application, it sure seems that way toward it. Do you agree upon the information about for what is provided to those who qualify and for so yeah. So it sure seems that way that question if it's kind of like a narrative toward like positive and narrative thinking toward it that you have a desire to do it work, though, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that you want to kind of look at it like a goal to where that if there's going to be any source of a promotion, or maybe if it's anything about what you call is to where by the time you do return back to work, or by the time you do start getting the process going, that it's like that it's basically another way of saying it's like a kind of like an agenda, but the type of word that I'm looking for is actually more like a goal to where that that like somebody, whenever you do apply for a job, that there's going to be expectations, right? And those overall expectations is going to be about the fact about what was expecting, what was expected, and of course for what progress is made, and such and such. But on your hand too, it sure seems that way to where that when we're talking about having a desire to make a lot of money, and do you have that ability to where you can earn, learn new things. And it seems like to me that like I tell everybody here too, that really that it's really about the attention, right? But at the time it's like really that is that really and the way we ask, the way somebody would maybe ask that though is toward yeah, do you have a desire to make a lot of money? And explain what is your knowledge when it comes to investments. So that would probably more likely be the next question right there, talking about for investments. And so it's like for do you have a desire to make a lot of money? And then explain what is so it sure seems that way that whenever we do see questions like that, and let's just say that if you were to put a double space right there, and do you, I'm like do you have the basic training and knowledge based on the requirements? Based so really that so if we were be talking about that a lot of times, and at the time it sure seems that way, that you go by the question to where that well, what does it usually mean when we say that have a desire to make a lot of money? I'm like, is that just another way of how do you want to cause is toward that a lot of the expectation about the position, about what the responsibilities are going to be, and willing to overcome tasks and assessments and all this. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that whenever you're going to hear that question a lot of times, and you want to know too that how much are we talking about necessarily? I'm like, well, do you have a desire to make on average of up to $1,700 by every 30 days or something like that? And like, and we want to know too that what do we call a lot of money in general? And like everybody else might even say that well, do you have a desire to make a lot of money? Do you? I'm like, do you? Are you willing to? Is it really asking? Are you willing to overcome the difficult challenges, or maybe about the fact about that whenever money does come in, that is it going to be more than above expected or something like that? And so a lot of times it seems like that the question could mean a number of things, but let's just say on average though, that the question means is toward that for what is expected. For what is expected, and so what the type of salary and desire for what is expected, right? And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that whenever they're going to go ahead and ask the question toward that, do you have a desire? And like anybody like 102 that that a desire is another way of how do you want to cause is toward it. That you have any source of a mire toward that anything planned or anything expected and knowing about anything in that in that process to where that you want to go ahead and think about that to where okay, what exactly is it that you need to do, and then also it could also be about the fact about that for what you have to work with, right? And so it sure seems that way that whenever we think about that question right there in a 102 a lot of times, that that whenever we think about that to where that all you really are doing, if anything, is that you're working that out to where you could apply for a job or you're trying to see if you qualify for certain benefits of some sort. So a lot of times it sure seems that way that this question right here seems to apply to a lot of things, right? Like it seems to apply to where the fact about, yeah, that desire and then also, do you have a desire to make a lot of money? And so it sure seems that yeah, it goes by the highlights to make, or if anything, go ahead and maybe put right here, like in case of anybody that may want to know too, that why can't you just put like a dash right there and say that, you're not really making the money. What you're doing is that you're transferring the money. You're transferring the money, or if you want to put another quote on there toward it, yeah, well the money, the money that you are earning, of course, is not necessarily going to, I'm like, yeah. So it sure seems that way. That that question, of course, a lot of it that seems to all come from the fact about that whenever we're talking about marketing and maybe business trades or something like that, or anything to do with the fact about that, if you're going to be filling out any sorts of application note or any sorts of doctor's note, it seems like that, really, if there's really a rule to where passed toward it, that, whenever you do ask that question, that, really, that, do you have, that desire to where you can go ahead and accept that ability to where for how much money that you are going to be making at some point, and then knowing about the fact that the equal opportunity, and so it could be a number of things really, but between make and transfer, or maybe it could also be about as to where that yeah, if you want to kind of call it something like business trip, but the word I'm trying to think about right here, transferring, but then also investments, but then also there is toward that go by the markets right here. So that this is the type of wording I usually hear about a lot of times, like you're talking for marketing right here, marketing tips. So it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to marketing, a lot of times, and you want to know too that that what a lot of marketing companies are probably looking for is over the fact about for how businesses are doing, and then maybe about the amount of time, like the amount of time time per time per calendar. So it sure seems that way that when we're talking about having a desire to make a lot of money right here, and you want to know too, to what exactly is it that like if that right there is supposed to be any sort of question, or if that right there is supposed to be put like in like a scenario. And to me though, that's more likely something that you would see in like a scenario, right? So it sure seems that way that a scenario to where that there's if there was a problem. If there was a problem of some sort, and then a lot of times it sure seems that way that for anything that you're going to be working on necessarily, but it sure seems that way that that whenever somebody's going to be asking that question to where that do you have a desire to make a lot of money, and do you have a desire to answer, solve problems very quickly, and a lot of times it sure seems that way. That's really the question in the matter. To where, do you have, can you solve problems? Can you solve problems very quickly? I'll go and put on here, very quickly or something like that. And so it sure seems that way that, if you were to be asking a question like that, what do you think the response is maybe going to be? Can you solve a problem? I go and put on here problems. Can you solve problems very quickly? And it's like, and then they're going to maybe put on your quote is this toward that, one example. So it sure seems that way that most of the time on those applications, that whenever you do answer a question, a lot of times, it's like this application scenario, it should only take you 15 minutes to get through this application process, but then at the same time, it seems like that, that whenever you do respond in like maybe 14 characters or something like that, just like do like a quick response. And let's just say that if you were to say something like, because, and to say, give like a reasonable, like everybody say that, because the reason, how I solve problems very quickly is based from my own perspective. So that would be something that I would say right there. For sure, Mike, the reason shows that I solve problems very quickly is based on my own perspective. And so it sure seems that way that anybody who's going to be reading that is maybe going to wonder to word it. What is that supposed to mean right there? I don't understand. I am sorry, but I don't quite understand that response right there. So it sure seems that way that whenever you do fill out an application a lot of times, and you want to know too, that if there's supposed to be any sort of memo, transcript recorded or something like that, and let's just say if you're talking with somebody, maybe like an automated system, and want to know too that whenever you give a reasonable answer, and I'll go and put on here like if this right here is supposed to be highlighted in green right here, highlighted in yellow. So let's just say that put on here like you have that highlighted in green right there. Go ahead and have that highlighted in yellow, so that way we can tell about which ones that are questions and which ones that would be considered your responses. And so it sure seems that way that a lot of times that's sometimes what we see right here. Do you have the basic training and knowledge, and based on the requirements? And you could maybe respond to something like, yes, yes, but everything is so different than from my previous from my previous position. So that would probably be something that I would more likely say is that that whenever it comes to understanding about trying to respond to certain applications, and maybe whenever you want to go ahead and provide feedback based on it, whenever you're filling out an application a lot of times. And it sure seems that way that that a lot of these applications, though, and it's like, yeah, what names do you think that we have to get to those to where that if one simple answer is not good enough just to be able to explain to somebody about what is it that you're talking about, that it sure seems that way to where that yeah, that for the most part, though, that if there's any questions and answers that are going to be asked a lot of times, and at the time it seems like that, yeah, like everybody else might say that that, well, really, that if we can at least talk over the phone about anything that you have a question about, or if anything, can we have a virtual discussion about a lot of the stuff right here that's mentioned on the application. And so it sure seems that way that at the time that really that so if we're going to be filling out an application a lot of times, and let's just say that if you were to reply to that discussion, and maybe if you go ahead and put like maybe like a face like that right there, and say something like to where if you had the experience you would know what I mean. So it sure seems that way that when we think about that, though, if like, yeah, you have right there, and then if you were to go ahead and put something like that, even on a text message, and you want to know too that, for any particular reason at all, that you're going to go ahead and want to know too that, okay, who's talking here, and what exactly is it, what's all this all about with all those stickers and everything that you got right there. So it sure seems that way that in order to be able to have a desire to make a lot of money, and you want to know too that why can't the question be about is toward that you have a desire to make a lot of credits and points, and you want to know too that why can't the question be that toward that you have a desire, yeah, do you have a desire to earn points? Do you have a desire to earn points? So it sure seems that way that, yeah, and at the time it sure seems that way that that a lot of what you do see nowadays, it sure seems to all come from the fact about toward you are earning points and credits whenever you do fill out the paperwork and maybe do an interview, and maybe when I may so yeah, so a lot of times it sure seems that way that why is it, for any reason, that why is it that somebody would ask, do you have a desire to make a lot of money, and do you have do you fill the requirements of some sort? And so it sure seems that way that that whenever you do read some of these applications, though, and at the time it's like, well, what exactly does that mean? To word it, yeah, well, what it pretty much means, like I said down here, I'll go ahead and put space right here, is toward it, are you to agree with those challenges when it comes to the resources needed. So what exactly does that mean? And I can just say on here that what exactly does that mean? Well, what type of resources are we talking about? I'm talking about that type of yeah, so work in a society, and I'm also talking about that the work that the tenants and clients and like yeah, this service. So like so yeah, the type of work that the employees and staff and all them do, and so it sure seems that way that that whenever we're talking about is just toward it, filling out those applications a lot of times, and it sure seems that way. That really, is that really a question? And if it is a question, then really, what's the best answer for it? And it sure seems that way toward it. Well, really, the best answer really would be about is toward that. Yeah, well, really, that whenever you do. In order to be able to proceed, though, that it's like, yeah, that you would need to have a desire to do well, and then go by providing the resource and like so yeah, so it's so it sure seems that way that whenever if you're going to be accepting an opportunity, right, to whenever you're going to be accepting an offer, though, that it's all seems about as to where that what exactly is it that they're expecting from you? What exactly does is anybody like if you're going to be taking a job offer, or maybe if you're going to be accepting any source of opportunity offer or something like that. But why does that really have to be a question? Maybe when a lot of these companies and businesses would already have that information based on your experience and maybe the training that is needed, and a lot of times it sure seems that way. That really that when we think about that, though, that really whenever you do go to visit a doctor, or maybe whenever you're filling out an application, though, that maybe it should be with a fact about it, that the questions should maybe be about as to where that are you familiar with this source of training, and that you have good skills and confidence with learning new things and meeting people in the community, and you have good educational resources. And instead, it seems like that the question is kind of revert toward that your salary and income and bonuses, and so that's why it sure seems that way. That when we think about that, though, and 102, that yeah, that do you have a desire to earn points? Do you have good confidence? And so it sure seems that way. Yeah, good confidence. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it sure seems that way. That tell everybody, the truth of the matter, though, that it's like there's really sometimes that there's really no simple way really to explain everything. But still, based on my experience, though, it sure seems that way to where that whenever you're trying to explain, whenever you're trying to answer questions on an application, as much as you can, a lot of times it sure seems that way, that there's that there's something expected from you, from what resources that are needed just to be able to proceed for the next steps. So it sure seems that way, that that this question right here is all about a desire, and it sure seems that way, that the question maybe should be go by as to where a desire to meet the requirement starts by saying, and you can go ahead and maybe include a quote right there, starts by saying is toward it that a desire to meet the required starts. I'll go and put on here the requirements. Starts by saying is toward it your achievements are considered great. Your achievements are considered great. So what does that mean? Well, that means that a lot of people they're all pretty happy with what resources and services and all that they received. So that's why it sure seems that way. That when we talk about having a desire to make a lot of money, that could also mean by the fact about that. Yeah, well, really, are we talking about, how much per hour, or maybe how much per year, or something like that? Are we talking about the overall expectation about for who's the oldest and maybe but still. But at the time you want to know too if that's really supposed to be worded as a question, and everybody else might say that really that on the application it's worded as a question, but really it's supposed to be I think to me it's worded as a scenario to where if there is a problem in the case, then it's a problem that needs to be solved, and then what are the good acknowledgement about that. So it seems like to me though that whenever it comes to understanding about good confidence for the job, and then what educational resources that are needed, and it sure seems that way that really that what we really are trying to do, and I can go and put right here, is toward it for how it all comes how the progress comes together. So it sure seems that way that like everybody else might even say that I can go and put on here is toward it automatically. So all the hard work, and let's just say that all the hard work that you put into something, and 102 is toward it. How do you know when the progress is working on its own at its own time? And let's just say if you're getting ready to maybe some mail something or something like that, respond to a letter, or maybe send something in the mail or something like that, and let's just say that if it's already been done for you or something like that, so everybody else might 102, if you've been there to where you're 102, it seems like something seems to be a lot more work than what you thought it was, and so it sure seems that way that if that's really supposed to be a question right there, or if that's really what you call it be, is toward it, testing your knowledge. And a lot of times it sure seems that way. It's all about testing your knowledge. About I was we were just testing you, and so it sure seems that way that we are testing. We're just testing. We're just testing you. So a lot of times it seems like that whenever you do take a test, or maybe if you're trying to get some specific training, a lot of times that it seems like to me though that that whenever you ask a question, that more likely that they're going to say that we know that for sure, but we just thought we would ask, or just to confirm that, or somebody says so it sure seems that way that a lot of times with most interviews will probably say that just to confirm, just to confirm that, just to confirm that, and I can go and put on here like just to confirm that, and just to confirm that's one of the reasons why we ask right there, just to confirm that, and I can go and put right here on the left, just to confirm that. That sounds a lot like what insurance companies would say, especially. I'm like, just to confirm that is correct, that we thought we'll go and ask, even though if we do have the information right here that, according to what we are required to do here at our company, that we do have to ask the questions again and again and again. And that's one of the reasons why is toward that so that way we can make sure that everything matches with what we have here, and so that's why it seems like everybody else might even say too that the whole purpose about this application right here, it seems to be from both sides, right? Why can't it come from just one side? And it seems like to me though that people might say too that really that. Why can't it just come from one side? What I mean by one side is toward it, the information that needs to match. Yeah, the information needs to match. Yeah, the information needs to match on both sides. So it's like, yeah, that I can highlight that maybe in a different color too, but change the color but I don't know. I just really think people might say that, if you highlight that in green, you want to know too that, that's, you would maybe highlight that, but, anyway, but I'm just saying that, that the information that needs to match on one side. So I can just put on here one side. One side. One side or the other. So it sure seems that way that when we're talking about any source of discussion, really, and you want to know too that why is it for any reason at all that what side are we talking about? Or two sides. Is it that yeah, the information needs to match based on for what's going on your side compared to what's going on our side, and so half the time it sure seems that way that yeah, that what we mean by sides is toward yeah, well really that based on the systems and based on the fact about for the information that we're working with here at our office, that source of it's the source the same, but at the same time, know that you want to know too that whenever you do ask the questions, a lot of times, if you have a desire to make a lot of money, what source of response do you think that would be expected, and why do you think that there will be what you call the right or wrong answer about that? And like everybody else might even say that if that's just to prove your confidence about if there's any source of requirements about how much money that you're supposed to make if you're going to be working, for their company or something like that. So a lot of times it seems like that if you were to put on the application that, yeah, do you have a desire to make a lot of money? And let's just say that if you were to put on the application something like, yeah, tuition but still, if you were to put on the application that you were applying for the job for, and let's just say that if you were to put on there, such as, yeah, 1350, and so let's just say that, if you decide it's like a 1350, per hour or something like that, and you want to know too that, really that on the application, if you put on there 1350, that do you think that maybe that's going to maybe answer the question to where if you have a desire to make a lot of money, or if that's going to maybe just say is this toward a kind of like a scenario to where that okay, we don't quite understand, but still that you said earlier that you have desire to make this amount per hour, but according to what we see on our side, that you put something different on there, and so it sure seems that way that could that possibly be worded differently, or for any reason at all that would be the next step is to where you fill out that process, a application or some sort, but it sure seems that way that really that does do you have a desire to earn points in good confidence? So it sure seems that way that if this is supposed to be a yes or no answer, like everybody else would say, that we just need a simple yes or no. We need a simple yes or no, and half the time you want to know too that can I say maybe? Maybe or definitely. So people may say that, yeah, well, definitely, huh? Maybe or definitely. So it sure seems that way that whenever you do respond like that, and then somebody's gonna maybe say that, you know, yeah, that's not really. I'm like, oh yeah, for like any sorts of interview, and you want to know too that okay, yeah, maybe so, or we'll see what happens, or something like, do you have desire to earn a lot of points? Do you have desire to meet the criteria of the proper training? Do you have a desire to meet people in the community and then show them what you do, and maybe just show them about anything about what you call any promotions or certifications that are required or something like that, any licensing to work in that field? And it sure seems that way that for the most part that they'll say that well, no, yes and yes and no. And so it sure seems that way that, yeah, whenever you do respond to a lot of those applications, though, it's like you're going to maybe say that, yeah, no, no fit. Yes, I am familiar. So let's just say that if you were to say something like that, and at 102 that, if this right here was supposed to be like a recording, a transcript of a recording from a conversation, and at U102 that is toward it, yeah, well, really, you look at the conversation a lot of times, and at 102 that, really, that for how long it takes just to respond, or for anything such as, well, I don't know what that means, or I don't know what that response is supposed to be for, or something like that. And so let's just say that, yeah, like everybody else would say too, that, you're going to say, okay, yes, or, maybe, or something like that. So it sure seems that way that, that whenever you're going to be doing any sorts of interview, though, that it seems like to me, though, that really, for the most part, that you really are just gathering information. Anybody say that, yeah, really, I guess if that's really the truth of the matter, that, yeah, thanks for your time. Well, we're really here, we're just, getting ideas, gathering information. Gathering information, and if we think that you are fit for the job, then we'll call you. We'll get back to you about that. And so it sure seems that way, like everybody else might want to know too. That whenever you do go to a job interview or have any sort of interview, though, that half the time it seems like that that one interview, if one interview lasts for at least 30 minutes, then chances are that you would probably, like everybody else would say too, for sure, that at least for 30 minutes, if go ahead and just put on here the timing right here, and the timing. If the timing of that interview lasts for at least 30 minutes, and then there's a chance that for sure that you'll get response, and it might be a little bit of the bad news, it might be a little bit of the good news, but at the same time, it sure seems that way that when we think about that, to where that why is it that simple questions go by what you call the longer answers, and so at the time you want to know too that whenever you look at this discussion right here and you see that, toward it, why is it that the answers seem to be a lot longer than compared to the questions? And it may be that, whenever you do ask the questions, that there's maybe a few comments right down here, and maybe something written on the right, maybe on the left right there, and that U102 is toward it, yeah, well, really, that everybody else might even 102, that, really, what does that usually mean? Like everybody else might even 102 is to where that that whenever you're going to be asked the questions a lot of times, and let's just say that maybe if it's more than 3 questions, it's like, yeah, do you have a desire to make a lot of money? And then also that do you know anything about licenses or maybe certifications or something like that, or rewards points, or something like, yeah, any other source of marketing tools or investments. And it sure seems that way that I see that a lot, especially on the mobile apps, but still it's like that a lot of money to a lot of us would say too is to where that really that do you have a desire to make $50? And half the time it seems like really that I don't really know about you, about everybody here, but to me though that's more like a bet, like everybody else would say too, that whenever you bet a lot of money for something, it seems like it's all about guessing correctly, and half the time it seems like that's the whole point of the matter, to where that if you are correct, yeah, if you are correct, I'm like, really, I'm like, do you think a lot of times it seems like that's exactly what people are saying? If you are correct, then that you have desire to earn more money, you have a desire to be able to run the position, you have a desire to get to the proper training that you need, and then you also have a desire to be able to handle the process of the situation so far as working in the customer service or something. So a lot of times it seems like to where that's the whole point of the matter, of the fact about that really that the why do the like, yeah, like why do the answers need to be a little bit more complicated, and maybe what you call trading the conversation back and forth. So it seems like that the questions start out as a question, right? But at the time, it seems like it goes by the scenario, and I look at that more of a scenario that people are trading conversations and comments back and forth. It's not really a question, but it's a scenario, and like anybody else would say too, that you're going to have a conversation about that, and it seems like to me that like everybody else might want to know too, that if you're willing to solve a problem within the matter of time, let's just say in just 2 days, if you're able to solve a problem within 2 days, then if you have a desire to make $50 or something like that, but like almost everything else, I'd probably say too that yeah, just be surprised. Just be surprised, right? And so it sure seems that way, that the whole process about just be surprised. And I just really think too that are you really impressed, surprised? Are you impressed about the whole situation? I don't really know, to be quite honest, but at the same time, it sure seems that way. That yeah, about almost everything we do on an everyday basis, it seems to be what you call, just the beginning of the learning process, right? But at the same time, it seems like to where that whenever somebody asks a simple question, it seems like to me that really, do they really need to know the details about the answer, or for any reason at all, that if they're just asking just because, that if they're just concerned, or for any reason at all, that I'm just giving you a hard time or something like that. But at the same time, it seems like that you're trying to solve a problem here. You're trying to you get everything, like, yeah, you're just trying to gather information, and you're just trying to fix the matter. And a lot of times it seems like it's over about the fact about that yeah, well, really, if there's any problem, solve the matter. But it sure seems that way, that why is it that question, if you have a desire to make a lot of money, why can't it be put into a scenario? And like when you want to know too, that yeah, well, any tips or suggestions or anything like that. But the way I think about it too, though, that whenever it comes to studying about money and investment in marketing, though, that it seems like to me, though, that yeah, well, really, that the way we think about that is that why is it that why does that really have to be a question about about how much money are we talking about, and then what exactly are you going to be spending the money on? But still, it seems like to me that I just really feel like telling a lot of these companies is that the reason why I'm doing this process right here is so I can share the ability for what somebody can learn about this. They can watch me and look at the work that I do, and they can learn something from me instead of thinking about the money all the time. And like all the other companies might say that, okay, well, really, that for any confidence, and I'll even tell everybody here too that whenever it comes to job resumes, especially, that one question that maybe that I don't really see too much on a job application is toward it. Do you think you could be chosen? Do you think that you could be chosen? And for any confident reason, why do you think the company picked you? So we're going to maybe see something like that on an application, right? And let's just say that if I were to respond to that and say something like, I really don't. I really don't know. But knowing this is what I do. So more likely I'm gonna say something like that, and I can see that I'm like, yeah, the way I respond. So a lot of times it seems like that whenever you're going to be if it's supposed to be like a postscript or something like that, that you see that the letterings and all, but I really don't know, but knowing this is what I do. What I do is that it's on my resume. It's on my resume that I recommend something. When I recommend something, I call that that this is where the magic begins. I call that this is where the magic begins. So it sure seems that way that go by the Parrott quote, and so it sure seems that way that you go ahead and add a few commas and quotations or anything like that, and parentheses within the writing, and so it sure seems that way that people might say that how do you know that maybe whenever you're shouting out the answer, or maybe whenever you're just giving the thought of your opinion or something like that, but at the time, it seems like I really don't know, but on the other hand, that on my resume, that this is where the magic begins, to where I make a suggestion, and let's just say if that suggestion does work, or if anything, it shows some source of improvement. So I just really think too that for anything about what you call, for ideas, suggestions that work. That work best. So it sure seems that way that I just really think that that should be fitting like into like a scenario, and that's why it's like what I mean by scenario, what I mean by is that there's going to be discussions and comments that are going to be posted, right? And you want to know too that will really if that's really a question that maybe you should answer, or for any reason at all that there's something about that to where that they give any source of conclusion or reasonable response, such as there's something about your application on your cover letter that you talk about that maybe the company likes about what you do, and on your hand too that if we do wind up making a lot of money at some point, that about how much do you think that you would like to receive from that. So it sure seems that way that is it really about the fact about the offer of any bonuses or salaries or raise or anything like that, or if it's over the fact about that really that what we really are trying to do is we're just really trying to just gather information about before we do our hiring, and before we proceed with the next steps, is that we're just trying to figure out here that based on the work that you do, that just knowing about, are you willing to overcome those difficult challenges, and so it could be a number of reasons, right? Really, but at the same time, it seems like that that's not really a yes or a no answer, and I just really think too that if you have a desire to make a lot of money, that why can't you put on there to where that to be impressed with based on your experience, based from the references that you have to give. And so that's why it sure seems that way that whenever you do respond to a question, that it seems like to me that really, if there's really a right or a wrong answer, or if people are just kind of gathering information a lot of times, and it seems like that's usually the case, is that people are just saying that, well, we're just trying to get some information together and making sure it matches, for what we have, on the system, and half the time it seems like that's really the case. But so far as can you solve problems very quickly, and give one example, and I might say that one example would be is this toward just one example, like, well, give one example toward it, what's called the highlights, is to give. Can you solve problems very quickly? And the solution for that would be is this to where that if you want to kind of put it into like an equation toward it, you think about reasons. You think about reasons, and maybe if you put on there, and like an equation toward it, like it corresponds. So let's just say if you were to put a reason like a cause and effect, and let's just say that kind of like the HTML type wording right here, and let's just say that if you were to flip the switch on or off. So let's just say that flip the switch. Flip the switch. So if somebody were to say something like that, what exactly does that mean in general? And at the time, it's like, okay, flip what switch, or knobs or whichever. So a lot of times it seems like that if that's really supposed to be the directions, or if that's really supposed to be about the fact about okay, you're not supposed to do that quite yet, what you're supposed to. So it's like, so I would kind of like, so if you're given directions, and at the time, if you're trying to read it like on a script of some sort, flip the switch, or if anything, you check the connection. So it's like, so it sure seems that way that in order to be able to solve the problem, it seems like that, number one, that you want to go ahead and just check, if you just really want something like, if you just really want something to do, if you just want to making sure that the equipment is cleaned, and maybe check the connection, and maybe just to see that everything, if everything is all set correctly and all that. And so it sure seems that way that, yeah. I'm like, do you really have to put that in any source of equation in the matter? But it sure seems that way that that whenever you're going to be reading any source of directions or some sort, and want to know too that because the reason shows is that I solve problems very quickly is based on from my own per, perspectives and based on experience. But anyway, but that's the way I think about it too. That whenever you're just when you're just trying to generate some ideas and then knowing about it, that you're working with something here and just thinking as toward it, yeah, well, really, whenever you're just studying and just trying to figure out, trying to piece together the pieces of the puzzle, and at the time it seems like that, why does that seem to be put into like a question toward it? Yeah, if that's not really a simple yes or no answer, but it's more like a scenario. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a good day.